Alright guys, to install your kit, you are going to need to first remove all of your screws. I did that to save time. The next step is going to be splitting the shell of your blaster. And retaliators have a tendency to stick up in the front. In the event that one sticks, you can use a small flathead screwdriver to gently split the shell. And that way you don't force it open, causing internals to fly out. You know, you could lose your trigger head springs or dart accessory teeth. Okay, let's see. So you'll notice that this Retaliator has a stage 2 kit installed. The stage 3 kit works best. Well, actually, I think you can only use the forward portion of the sealed barrel if you have the stage 2 kit breech, because that breech seals up against this lip here in the chamber of the stage 3 kit. So the next step is going to be to remove your internals and get them out of the way so you don't lose them. Take care not to lose your accessory tooth. Okay, next, remove these 2 screws that are holding the stock chamber in place. And we will be reusing these screws. And then remove your stock chamber. Be careful not to lose the spring on the dart tooth. And then you can set that aside. You won't be needing it. And while you have this off, remove the entire dart tooth and its spring. Okay, next take your stage 3 kit, take the chamber and the barrel and the spring. Actually, for this, I'm going to be using this chamber. That's a brand new one. Pop that in place. It'll fit right on top of these 2 pegs, and these cutouts here will fit up against your shell. Don't force anything. If it's misaligned for whatever reason, you'll notice that your shell will not close properly in the front. And you can go ahead and add those 2 screws. And then reinstall the plunger assembly with your stage 2 kit after you take the spring out. Make sure everything lines up. Make sure these 2 pegs are in that rail inside of the shell. And then move your priming handle back slightly. This makes it easier to close the shell. From here, install your trigger catch, taking care not to lose the spring. I'm going to leave that hanging out since it's wanting to poke out. I'll fix it before closing the shell. And then take your, a lot of people like to keep this lock, which prevents you from pulling the trigger while the blaster is in the rearward prime position. And then your trigger. And next, you are going to want to take the 7 kilogram spring and set that aside. Take a look at everything, make sure everything's lined up, that your trigger is in its rails, the plunger is in its rails, the bolt sled is properly seated, and then close your shell. So when you close the shell, line up the priming handles. And then in this case, because the trigger catch spring was giving me problems, I left it poking out, and I'm going to tuck it in with a screwdriver. There we go. Let's see, make sure everything is together. Right. Then the handle, the grip plug or spare dart holder, and the accessory tooth. Okay, from here you can start to put in the screws and then install your 7 kilogram spring. This is my preferred method for installing these springs. It just ensures everything gets lined up, and then you can double check that the coils aren't poking out, getting in the way of the plunger, just like that. Everything looks good, and so you'll put the screws in now and then attach the forward barrel. And to do that, you'll notice these two tabs, they will fit into these slots here, ensuring that the barrel is oriented correctly. Then you tighten down the locking collar. It doesn't have to be super tight, because you want to be able to get it off, so don't over tighten it. Just make sure it's good and snug. And there you have it. I'm not going to dry fire this blaster because that 7 kilogram spring is quite strong. I would encourage you not to dry fire with the stage 3 kit installed. If you need to deprime, you can leave the bolt sled lock off and take out the trigger lock, so then you can bring the slide to the rear and pull the trigger and then gently let it fall. So that is the installation portion of this video, and I'm going to move into troubleshooting. So let's take it apart. Now there's one main troubleshooting concern, and that is sometimes when you fire, your darts will either not travel very far or get stuck in the end of the barrel. And there are a couple reasons for that. Okay, the main one that we've run into quite a bit is the dart loading arms getting stuck, which is why I wanted to take out that brand new chamber there. So I'm going to tear down this blaster real quick so we can take a closer look at the chambers. Oh, almost lost my trigger catch spring. Okay, so the first issue that we're running into is that the dart loading arms, which get pushed out of the way of the breech during loading. So here the arms are in their closed position and they're pushing a dart into the breech, and when the breech contacts them, it will open them and move them to the side, and then they fit into these slots here, which seal the chamber. Now that fit is has a very, very tight tolerance in order to minimize air escaping from this area. And you'll notice that there's a lip on the breech which interfaces with the bottom of the chamber, so there's some overlap there, also preventing air from escaping. Now, When that happens, the tolerance here on those arms is so tight that sometimes the right side arm in particular, I mean left side, if you are holding the blaster with an installed chamber, it's the arm on the left side, sometimes that is getting stuck in the open position. And when that happens, well actually it didn't happen just then. Let me see if I can simulate it. Nope. Okay, well, imagine that the left side arm is stuck in the open position, so you now only have the right side arm. And the right side, the arms lock together like this, so they can be strong enough to load the dart in place. Just one arm with its small coil spring, or with its small torsion spring, isn't enough to load a dart. So you'll end up with, let's see, you'll end up with darts that get only partially loaded into the breech and then pushed up into the barrel. Now, you'll notice that darts are loose here and then they get tighter as they go in. This is what builds that pressure, that air pressure, to accelerate the dart, and then the rest of the air in the plunger is used to accelerate it out of the breech. But that initial pressure build really helps the performance. Now sometimes when darts are partially loaded, you'll still see velocities, 100, 110 feet per second, but they won't be consistent if the darts aren't being consistently loaded. Because sometimes a dart may be loaded this far before it's pushed forward, sometimes it'll go a little further or a little less, because that one arm is not strong enough to consistently load the dart. So to remedy this, now this is not in all of the kits, this is, I think we've had 5 or 6 reports of this, but just in case, double check your kits. Now to remedy this, the first thing I did was I used, this grease tube was damaged, so I'm just taking the grease out of the side, but a tiny dab of grease applied to the slot here will solve the problem just around the edges of this slot, so it prevents the arm from getting stuck, and there'll be a really tight seal, and then when you pull the priming handle back, that jarring motion plus the grease is enough to unstick the arm. And I've had a lot of success with that just with our chambers here in the office during testing. Now another one that was brought to my attention by Jeff from our Facebook page. By the way, check out our Facebook page. We have a great community and some tech support does happen there, even though I'd rather tech support be handled in the forums, but quick questions can be answered on the Facebook. But Jeff from Facebook, he suggested using a X-Acto knife and just lightly scraping the slots here, and this is just removing a tiny bit of material. This is a more extreme fix. It shouldn't be necessary 99% of the time, but if you just have a very stubborn arm, this is an option. But my preferred method would be to take some sort of abrasive material. Now this POM is pretty abrasion resistant, so it's hard to remove material too quickly by using a file, or if you don't have a small file, you can take a bit of sandpaper and wrap it around a screwdriver to get inside that notch. So it abrades differently than normal plastic and is very abrasion resistant. But what you're going to do is you're just going to lightly file along the slot. Now, the tighter the slot, the better the air seal. So when you do this, you're just removing the slightest amount of material, just the bare minimum to get the arms to swing freely. Let me see if this one is even stuck. Okay, if I push really hard, I can kind of feel it. It's a little bit sticky, but the spring is overcoming that stick. But I don't know if I'll be able to recreate the problem here. And another suggestion from our Facebook page was to actually remove the arms. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could, if you were shooting specialized darts that you were making yourself, you could take the springs out of the arms so they'll stay locked in the open position and pressed into place. That way you'll have a good air seal. But that's not going to be a viable solution for most users, I think. Another thing to watch out for is the diameter of the darts. some darts, the Zombie Strike W branded darts in particular, if you look at the head, there's a small W with a period. They are a lot fatter than your standard streamlines and are getting stuck pretty badly. Most streamlines will fit with very, very little resistance. You will just have to see which darts work best for you and test them out before relying on them. And that's where the consistency issues are popping up. When I do testing here, I try to stick with darts that have the same stamp on them, or darts that fit the breech without too much resistance. A little bit is okay because you want that air seal, but too much, like that green dart, they won't fire reliably, or they'll get stuck. So other than that, the troubleshooting should be relatively straightforward. All of the standard Kit 2 things to look out for apply, like making sure your bolt set is aligned. This is especially important because you need this breech to line up with the chamber every single time in the same spot in order to give you a good seal with that lip. Oh, and one more thing. Because this barrel is two-piece, it is held together by screws, and there is a small seam between these two pieces. If you're experiencing weird consistency or sometimes darts are getting stuck, just take a look down the barrel to see if you can see that seam. If the seam being visible is normal, but if one side is protruding into the breech, that can be fixed by adjusting the screw tension here. So if it's protruding on one side, you're just going to loosen all of the screws and then tighten them back down slowly, double checking the inside of your barrel. And the seam will always be present, but as long as one side isn't protruding more than the other, it shouldn't affect performance. So if you have any questions regarding troubleshooting or getting the kit to run smoothly, shoot us a CRM ticket under tech support, and I will take care of that and get back to you. We also have a really good forum community that is very supportive. You can post questions and pictures there more easily than you can via email. But if you do email in, always include pictures. That helps a lot. Thanks for watching.